Tucker Carlson just revealed two bombshells for that Elon Musk interview that he's releasing later today. And he gave us a preview of two pretty large segments of his interview with Elon Musk and two things that make him highly concerned. One of which we already knew about. Let's start with that, but see it highlighted in the way that Tucker does. And it gives us potentially a little cause for pause. Listen in to this segment here from Tucker Carlson on Fox News this morning. Here we go.
Tucker Carlson tonight, and this is about what he discovered once he bought Twitter.
The degree to which various government agencies had effectively had full access to everything that was going on Twitter blew my mind. I was not aware of that.
Would that include people's DMs?
Yes.
Tucker,
Yeah.
I don't want you to give it away because we'll all be watching at 8 o'clock tonight. But what was your biggest jaw-dropper moment of this interview?
Well, Twitter is the smallest of the social media apps, but it's the one that's used by the people with power. I mean, it's everyone sitting on the set right now. It's every government official. It's every head of state. And all of their private messages were being read, not just by the U.S. intel agencies, but by a bunch of different governments. I mean, that's like an unbelievable fact. The whole thing.
Now, this is something that we've actually learned about in the Twitter files before, that in the Twitter file releases, we've seen that essentially the government had almost the full purview to review what everybody was talking about in their DMs and also specifically censor Republicans or people deemed to be spreading misinformation. The Twitter files spread on Twitter, obviously, were pretty enlightening to show just how deep the Department of Justice and the FBI had been involved with Twitter. And it makes you wonder, no surprise that the Biden camp, for example, knew about certain ads Republicans were going to drop before they were going to drop them during the election cycle. In addition to knowing, interesting, we know that a Hunter Biden laptop story is about to drop, and so what is potentially able to be done? Well, social media organizations potentially got the heads up from the government that, hey, there's going to be a fake story coming out soon, and you need to censor it. And then sure enough, when the Hunter Biden laptop story drops, which ended up being a true story, like it or not, it was a true story, well, a lot of the content was preemptively censored. And so Tucker Carlson is taking it a step further here and suggesting when the government potentially is able to look at all of your direct messages on Twitter and you're a reporter, then the government knows what kind of reports are going to drop next, what kind of videos are going to drop next, what kind of exposés are going to drop next. It's almost somewhat like this. If you're investigating a fraud, like I won't mention any names, Boxable, and you're communicating with certain individuals on a platform to gain access to documentation, and you're using or leveraging something known as journalistic privilege, which essentially allows an anonymous entity to share information with you, and then they can be legally protected from their identity being revealed because essentially that information is in the public's best interest. Well, if potentially that interest could then read your messages and not only see the sources or potentially preempt some of the news or exposés that you're planning on presenting, well, what you're really doing is you're stifling free speech in the worst way possible. You basically break or the process of investigative journalism. And look, this isn't as a defense of mainstream media, it's a defense of free speech, right? It's a defense of suggesting, hey, if people who potentially are going to have incriminating information about them revealed are able to step in and stop that information from being disseminated, then really what you're doing is you're turning America into like a Sudan, where you have two different militant groups now fighting over who has control over the state-run media. Why? Because if you control the state-run media, you control the narrative. You control what and how elections should be shaped. And it's really scary. And artificial intelligence could potentially take that fear to the next level. Now, I've used ChatGPT as an example many times, and I've found that ChatGPT could convincingly lie to you. And this is something that I've experienced by taking articles and pasting articles into ChatGPT to see what ChatGPT's opinion is on that article. And I've asked it before, hey, here's the article. And then I'd ask ChatGPT, hey, was there any mention of XYZ? ChatGPT will reply to me and say, nope, no mention at all of ChatGPT or of XYZ. And then I say, hey, but there's a paragraph here that literally mentions XYZ. And then once it's caught red-handed, it'll reply, oh, you're right, I'm sorry. The article did actually talk about XYZ, and here's what it said. And it just makes me wonder, my goodness, how much could artificial intelligence potentially be used in shaping public discourse in the future, especially since we're probably going to move from an environment in society where we actually have to do research to just getting results. But those results are given to us by artificial intelligence, and that could potentially be scary. See, in school today, to some extent, we're still taught, again, to a limited extent, a very low bar, critical thinking, which is, what is the source of the information? What biases does an author potentially have in a topic that's being reviewed? What sources are they using? What do the primary sources say? Are there potential flaws in that research? Well, that sort of investigation and study is something that generally we have to do, whether we're using a Google search or Google Scholar or publications, whatever it might be. That goes away when we start using artificial intelligence. We become separated from those primary sources, and all of a sudden we have a robot that's telling us answers. And that becomes scary if those answers could be wrong. And that's something that Tucker Carlson talks about in his interview with Elon Musk as well. And that makes me very concerned because already today, our ability to critically think with access to many primary sources is very low. Artificial intelligence could lower that even further by essentially making us more reliant on automation, robots, autonomy, and less focused on actually being able to think for ourselves. That's scary because then he who controls the robots controls what we think. It's the same reason why the Federal Aviation Administration suggests that pilots need to be careful about becoming too reliant on automation, because when that automation is wrong, pilots might crash planes. Same is true for cars on autopilots. The more you become reliant on autopilot, the more you potentially become blindly reliant on autopilot in situations you shouldn't. The same could be true with our education. And that is scary, and I've seen it already happen myself. I think it's why Google has delayed the release of their artificial intelligence so much. But now they're realizing they have to catch up because other companies are preempting them, potentially risking the dominance of Google, where we know 60% of their revenues come from search or search-related products. Google's got a big problem ahead of them. But listen to Tucker Carlson here just this morning. And play. Okay.
It was on server farms that, presumably could be blown up if need be. But the deeper problem is not simply that it will become autonomous and turn us all into slaves, but that it will control our understanding of reality and do it in a really dishonest way. It could be programmed to lie to us for political effect. And by the way, if you go on it, just play around with it, type in crime stats, like where are these crimes, who's committing these crimes, and where. It will lie to you about government data on crime and probably a lot of other things. That's terrifying because you could imagine a future a year or two from now where all of our understanding of the world around us is determined by AI, and it's lying to us. So that has huge implications for, say, the presidential election in 2024 and everything else.
Yeah, and Tucker Carlson is right here. He's right with what he says there. I'm not here to suggest that you should like Tucker Carlson. I would suspect that 50% of you absolutely despise Tucker Carlson. Maybe you even hate Elon Musk. Maybe 30% of you don't like Elon Musk. But the argument is true that AI is going to be something we have to really closely regulate and monitor. And in this interview between Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk, we're going to see some of Elon Musk's concerns about how artificial intelligence could essentially control our future society and could be more dangerous than anything we've seen before. Here's a little bit of a clip from Elon Musk, quote unquote, sounding the alarm on artificial intelligence. Here we go.
It's bad.
To lie.
To
That's
lie.
exactly right. And to withhold information.
To lie and yes, comment on some things, not comment on other things, but not to say what the data actually demands that it say.
How did it get this way? I thought you funded it at the beginning. What happened?
Yeah, well, that'll be ironic. But the most ironic outcome is the most likely, it seems.
Yeah. So, but the point there, what Elon makes is, the data doesn't necessarily have to be what the artificial intelligence uses. And that was exemplified to me when I gave that pasted article to ChatGPT and I said, tell me about this article. Hey, did it mention this? No, it definitely doesn't. Really? It says so right here. Oh, you're right. My mistake. It's already broken the way it is. Now we know it's new, which is fine. We don't expect something new to be perfect. But the question is, how convincingly wrong artificial intelligence can be is something that should make us nervous. Now, personally, from a real estate point of view, running a real estate startup, I use artificial intelligence, but I know damn well not to put my money on it. That's because artificial intelligence can help me prioritize certain properties to look at with my real estate startup, but I would never rely on it to actually pull the trigger or make an offer, at least not anytime soon, because I know it's just not perfect yet. Even if it's 95% good, that 5% could be convincingly damaging. So I'm excited to see what happens in the full Elon Musk interview with Tucker Carlson, but I will say the fact that entities, whether they're government controlled or not, in the future could be controlled by artificial intelligence and vice versa, that entities could control artificial intelligence, makes me pretty nervous. So it's something that I think we should all be paying attention to, not just from the angle of free speech and media, but also from the example of our business and how we operate. Now, most importantly, I want to make the argument here that if you want to protect yourself from artificial intelligence, you've got to do everything in your power to think even more critically than artificial intelligence does today. And so I think as an action step for you, I think it's really important to see how can artificial intelligence be used in your business. Whatever you do for work, maybe sign up for ChatGPT and ask it, hey, tell me about XYZ, and it's about your profession. See what it already knows about your profession. Then get into the nuance and see where you could drive it wrong and where you still have a competitive advantage over artificial intelligence. If you're finding that you don't, then you might want to start studying a little bit or getting into a profession where you're going to be more insulated from artificial intelligence. In the future, that might, for the near term at least, be construction, real estate, who knows. But we know that we're going to start seeing a lot more artificial intelligence start invading and walking into financial advising, certainly to some extent diagnosis help for doctors, coding, software, and media. It's going to be a big deal, as well as creativity. So we'll see what happens with ultimately with artificial intelligence. But I have to say, I've got some concerns. I'm a big fan of making sure we have as much free speech and fact-based speech as possible. That's my goal, is always to provide as many facts and opinions as possible, but opinions that are based on facts and then that are neutral. I don't really care if you're left or right. I consider myself pretty much squarely in the middle. I'm a big fan of doing what's best for America. I'm so honored to be part of the country. So hopefully you feel the same way. So we'll see what happens. Cheers to AI, I guess.